able to see an icon where you can raise your hand, and then we can call on you, and you can unmute your line using #6. So today's webinar is on early learning outcomes, and we are really going to give you a resource-packed agenda today because we're going to start off with part 1, where you'll hear from Lisa Küpper, who's here on the CPIR, about the newest Part C training modules and how you can use those training modules for your work with families and also with staff in your center in terms of professional development. And so Lisa's going to start us off. And then after Lisa, we'll hear from our friends at the Early Childhood Technical Assistance Center, also known as the ECTA Center, and they're going to share with us the vast amount of resources that are available for us through their website. And so you'll get a nice intro into what's available and lots of resources that you can just go there and find and share with families and also share in terms of building the skills of your staff. So let me first introduce Lisa Küpper. Lisa has been with us on the CPIR team since we started, and before that she was one of those main folks at NICHCY, where many of the curriculum and modules that you've seen from NICHCY, as well as many of the publications, are from the wonderful skills that Lisa brings to the CPIR team. And so, Lisa, when you're ready, take it away.
Okay, take it away, Goldie. It's a pleasure to talk about the training curriculum, but it certainly wasn't very much fun to write, I will say. It's very legalistic, as you well know, but it has a lot of great information in it, and there are multiple ways that you can use it. Right now, the training curriculum is called Building the Legacy for Our Youngest Children with Disabilities, and there are 14 modules planned and 8 completed so far. And I'm sure most of you probably have seen them or maybe even used them, which would be nice. Each module comes with a trainer guide and a 4-color slideshow with handouts and activity sheets. You can see there at the bottom of the screen the link at the hub where you can find all the modules that have been completed. A little bit of background is that OSEP asked NICHCY to write the Part B training curriculum after the reauthorization of IDEA in '97 and in 2004. So we've written 2, and then when they published final regulations for Part C back in 2011, they asked NICHCY to do a parallel package explaining the content and the requirements of the federal law and the regulations. Oh dear, I hear thunder here. Oh, let's hope that the power doesn't fail. Anyway, each of the training guides is, because it's legalistic, it can be very, very tough reading. So I can only imagine that in training it's probably a little tough listening to as well. So we tried to include a lot of ways to make it more fun. And that includes ways to talk to your audience and engage them right off the bat. A lot of tidbits and interesting facts we put in that really bring the curriculum and the regulations into the real world, so that if you're talking about how many children, you're talking about children in infants and toddlers who are in early intervention, how many are we talking about? And how do states do things? How does the field do things when it comes to giving early intervention services? We also try to infuse it with a lot of adult learning principles, which I'll get to in a minute, and lots of connections to other information, because there is, especially at the ECTA Center, tons and tons of really useful information out there about early intervention and working with very small children. So let's hope that the training actually, you can bring it to life by adding your own examples. Okay, there are two ways in which I would say you could find very helpful in using these modules. With families, to train families, either about the requirements of early intervention in the law, or just sort of an overview of the process that goes on in early intervention. And also you can use them for your own staff development. I know back in '97 when they reauthorized the law, the director of OSEP at that time the reason that they wanted to fund a training package was because they wanted the parent centers and people in the field to have really accurate information about what is required. And so it's actually a very useful way to train your own staff and to learn on your own about the training, about Part C. Okay, so let's look first at how you might use these modules with families. Naturally, you can't give all those details that are in the training package. People would be falling out of their seats. So we strongly recommend that you tailor the training. And you know, as trainers who work with families, that you shape a training session around how much time you have to devote to the training, how much your participants already know, because they will come in with a certain level of knowledge to start with, and it's important to build on that. And then what do they want to know? One of the things that's really prevalent about adult learning is that we tend to not be so much content-oriented as we are trying to solve a problem. So when parents and families come to your training sessions about early intervention, they're coming to solve a problem. They want information that will help them address a concern they have. So it's a good idea to ask what they want to know. What do they need to know? And because, of course, the regulations aren't very sexy, they can be really dense reading, a lot of cross-references that make it very hard to follow what the law actually requires. We would recommend that you can also refer families to the 2 pages that are noted at the bottom of this page. They are in the repository. They're in the hub, and one's in English and one's in Spanish. And it basically is an entry page to more information written in a much more family-friendly way about early intervention and small children. Okay, now when you look at the trainer guides, because they are very detailed, we don't really think anyone is going to present all that detail, but you as the trainer need to know the information in case somebody asks or just for your own information. So the way in which the trainer guides have been written is that they're headers that you can use, that you can see some of the examples there, like the slide is this, and here are the summary points you might want to make about that slide. And then if you want more detail, keep reading in the guide, need more detail, there it'll be. And hopefully this will help you as a trainer adjust the training to the time you have and the needs of your audience. The slides have been purposely designed not to be really super heavy, text heavy. So when people use them, you can either be very abbreviated in what you say and just make the major point, or you can go into more detail depending on your audience's needs and the time you have. All right, let's go back a minute to the incorporating the principles of adult learning. We did prepare a handout, which is on the hub, on the webinar archive, which I'll give you the link to in a minute, that just briefly summarize some of the points about adult learning. And like I said before, adults tend to be very problem-oriented, and so they go to a training session to learn something, to help them do something. And the same is true when they visit your website. They're coming for a reason. They have a quest, let's say, or a question. So in the trainings, it's really important to make it very clear to your families how this can be used in their real life. And a lot of times they can tell you that, as you well know. They come in with knowledge already, so activating that knowledge in their head, having them talk about what they already know, and make it very personal. They need to personalize it, as well as what they'd like to know about the subject, is a really fine way to engage adults. And I wish I could do it with you now, but you're all muted, so I can't. One of the things we did was include a lot of hands-on activities, not as many as we would like to, and they tend to be very much geared to working with the regulations, which of course is very boring. But some of them, I mean, there are also a lot of places that you could insert your own activities that, as a trainer, you know how to make it more fun for people and more active. I personally believe that one of the really useful things to do in a session with adults, and definitely with kids, is to have them get up and move around about every 15 minutes or so. It kind of blows the stink off, and you come back a little more refreshed and sit down, and your attention is much more activated. So some of the modules actually have slides in the slideshow that shows people getting up and stretching or taking a break or whatever, because about 15 minutes is about all people can take without a little teeny, change of air. All right, next one. The training curriculum also can be very useful for your staff to learn when you have new staff or volunteers, new board members that need to be very accurate in terms of what is legally required. And there are a lot of ways you can do this. You can either just read the training guides yourself or go topic by topic or module by module. For example, there are 2 modules on transition from Part C to other environments when children age out and they move on to preschool. And it's a really good way to learn a lot more about that process that you see play out in your community. So because one of the things that OSEP really did not want us to include in the training package was a lot of state-specific examples, it's really rich terrain for trainers to match up the content of the training curriculum with how it plays out in your state, because states have a lot of leeway in how they design their programs. And so it's real important to know how it's done in your state. I spent a lot of time going to websites in different states and looking at the kind of information that states put on their website to help families and residents of the state with respect to early intervention. And there is a lot of guidance, a lot of forms and instructions about how you fill out the forms. I'm not telling you something you don't already know, but it was a fascinating learning experience, and I wished we could have put it into the training curriculum. But OSEP didn't feel very comfortable with including state-level information. Okay. Look at the time, see what my time is. Also really useful for both families and staff are the pages that we developed on the website that were derived from the training package. Because one nice thing about the training curriculum is that it has been reviewed extensively by the Office of General Counsel at the Department of Education. So it was close enough to be legally sufficient that it's a very good source of accurate information. The nice thing about the pages that kind of spun off from the curriculum is that they're written in much more friendly language. They're not so, this part of the regulation or that part of the regulation. And it makes it much more consumable for your families. But it is also very much based on the accuracy of what OSEP required in that training package, which is very good. So you can refer families and your staff for your own fun to these two places on the website at the hub, where you can find out all kinds of stuff about early intervention. It's really broken apart into like 6 or 7 different areas. And finally, just for you all, one of the things I enjoyed most about writing the training package was the incredible amount of information that's out there. It's really fascinating. And although when you read the trainer guide, you get so bogged down in all the legalistic stuff, there are a lot of resources in those training modules that are meant for your edification and use. So what I did is I went through all the modules that have been published and extracted some of those resources. And you can see, I made a web page for y'all. It's we're going to take the shortcut. You know, you don't necessarily have to read the trainer guides to find this stuff. And it has a couple of different aspects that relate to this webinar, such as resources that will help you support early language learning, and then early math, which actually has the regular vocabulary word of numeracy. That's why I put math in quotes. And right from the ECTA Center itself, and you'll hear about this in a minute, how to write high-quality IFSP outcomes. There's some wonderful resources out there. Anyway, so that is on the hub. You can see the address there, just to have a little look and shortcut to the resources without having to read all those legalistic details. Anyway, that's pretty much what I wanted to tell you all, except for that I understand that the trainer guides are really dense, and yet they are very informative. So please, I encourage you to match the density of that information with really state-specific examples and personalized activities for your trainees, because that will really help them internalize the information. Okay, any questions? I can't see.
Oh. Lisa, thank you so much. I think that was a really excellent overview. At this time, if there are any questions, we could take a couple of questions. I don't see any that have been posted in the chat box. Are hard copies available? Oh, there is a good question.
Hard copies of training guides or the other materials?
I'm assuming of the other material, of the training guides.
It's all online, and you can download it and print it. When we first did the 1997 training curriculum for Part B, that was really pre-Civil War, if you will. We actually produced transparencies, you know, overheads that you put on the overhead machine. And there was a hard copy that was mailed out to all the parent centers. But now, no. It's extremely expensive to do that, as you can imagine.
And
but the resources that I've spoken of today, like the handout on adult learning principles and the PowerPoints from this presentation and the ECTA centers, they're all on the website. You can download them.
Yes. And in terms of, and with the modules, what you'll find is that there are PowerPoint slides, so that you can download those and use those directly with families. And if you need to, make some modifications or add slides, etc., to tailor it to your state context, it makes it really easy to do that. Thanks for that question, Janice.
And she also asks if there are other languages planned, and I really regret to say no. It's one nice thing about the Part B curriculum that we did was that there was a lot of it in Spanish, and at least all of the handouts were available in Spanish. So even if the slideshow wasn't, the handouts were. But in this case, no.
Yeah, that right now that's not that OSEP has not put that in the plan. And maybe if there are enough people asking the question, there may be some change in that decision. It was a really very large and complicated job, especially in terms of making sure that the legal pieces were aligned with what the general counsel for the Department of Ed was looking for. And so that would be the same, and if it was to be translated, it would have to go through that same, almost a very similar, I should say, vetting process, because they'd want to make sure that the Spanish translation was acceptable in terms of the council. But that's a good question, and it's definitely something that we at the CPIR are interested in, and if there is an opportunity for for that to happen through some OSEP resources, then we'll definitely keep you abreast of what's going on with that.
Yeah, it is a real problem for the feds because they can't vet it in Spanish, and we were allowed to do it because we were allowed to do the translations, and provided we put a disclaimer on there that said they were not official, and basically they took my word that for doing the best we could do and being faithful to the language, because they can't vet it. And yes, Janice, it's certainly okay for you to create a link from your website so you can share materials with families. Absolutely. Help yourself.
Okay, so Christina from the ECTA Center, and Christina Kasprzak. Did I say that correctly?
Yes, you said it exactly right, Deborah.
I had a little brain freeze there for a minute, and I said, I know how to pronounce that. Thank you. I'm sorry. Okay. I'm glad that I got that correct for you.
There's an awful lot of consonants in a row in that name, aren't there?
Yes. So we're joined now by Christina Kasprzak and Lynne Kahn, who are co-directors at the ECTA Center, and I'm sure that many of you are very familiar with the Early Childhood Technical Assistance Center and the wonderful contributions to our Parent Center resources that they have made available for us over these years and I guess in some ways decades. But we're happy to have them join us today and to let us know about their website, web resources, and also of particular interest to many of you will be the work that they're doing with states around the new results-driven accountability system and the helping states in terms of developing and implementing their state systemic improvement plans, or SSIPs, and these are some great resources that we'll be able to use as stakeholders in terms of playing a part in our work with our states around RDA. So Lynne and Christina, take it away.
Thanks so much, Deborah. It's great to be here. So we just thought we would share just a little bit about who we are and then highlight some key resources and information on our website, and then give you an opportunity to ask us questions about any of our resources or any of our information today. So we are funded to provide TA to all the states and jurisdictions for their Part C and 619 programs, and that's to support their implementation of IDEA, so essentially to ensure that all kids with disabilities birth to 5 and their families get high-quality, family-centered supports and services, culturally appropriate and family-centered supports and services. So that's our overall mission.
Can you guys all see the PowerPoint slide? Deborah, we're sharing our screen, so we won't be able to see the chat. So if you or Lisa want to just let us know if there's a question or discussion or a problem seeing the screen that somebody puts into the chat, just feel free to jump in and let us know. We can
Okay.
slow
We'll
down.
let you know, and we can see the PowerPoint.
Excellent.
Okay, great. And we're just now actually starting our 3rd year of funding. So we had 5 years of funding. We're just starting our 3rd year. And we're actually spread out across a number of different organizations across the country. Lynne and I are here in Chapel Hill at the Frank Porter Graham Child Development Institute. So we lead the center, but we have partners at Puckett and SRI. We have partners at the University of Colorado and also the University of South Florida. RTI International, we have one staff person at the University of Nebraska and one at Pacer Center. And you may be familiar with Sharon Walsh, who's been in the field a long time, and she is a private consultant who is also on our center. So we have experts from a lot of different center or locations with a history of different roles and responsibilities, some in research, some in training and TA, all kinds of experience to kind of collectively carry out our mission. So let's tell you a little bit about what you can find on our website. Some of what we thought you might want to know as highlights. And I'm going to try to toggle back and forth between the PowerPoint and the website for some of these. Others, maybe the screenshot is adequate. But you should have the PowerPoint, and all of the links are here down at the bottom on the right, so as well as that highlight one-pager that I sent Lisa that I think is posted as well.
Can all of you or any of you that have been to the ECTA website raise your hand? And then Deborah, you tell us, or Lisa, how many hands raised?
Lots of them.
7
Okay, that's good to know.
Some of us even almost live on your website.
That's great. Great to hear. Some of you may even have favorite places that you want to add to share with others on the line, in addition to some of those that we picked out that we thought you would find interesting or useful.
Mm-hmm. So what we wanted to just show you, the first couple slides were just kind of some really basic information, but it does seem like it's really helpful for both families and TA providers and the parent centers and everyone to just kind of find different people around the country. So on our contacts page, which I just circled that one place on the navigation bar, you can find the ECTA Center folks, you can find the Part C coordinators and chairs, the ICC coordinators, the ICC chairs and staff, and the 619 coordinators. So these are some of the key folks that people are often looking for. And as a national center, sometimes we get calls or inquiries about a particular state, so we try to figure out who exactly the right people are in the state. And a couple years ago, we added referral phone numbers, so which is really particularly important a lot of times for families to, if you don't know where to go in a state, if they have a general referral number for Part C, it'll be listed there with their site. So that's kind of a nice feature. And we have a topics page, which is another kind of quick and easy way to find. I think our website is, okay, I'm going to use Lisa's word, kind of dense. We have a lot of stuff. and so if you're looking for a quick search, you can use that Google custom search, but this is a really great place to start, I think. So if you find that you're looking for something and it's listed here, that's probably going to be a really direct way to go. And I wanted to show you also that we have a For Families page, and we'll go there real quick and see Of course, I want to make sure everybody knows we do have this for families. It's a great starting place for families, but we always want to make sure that so much of our website is applicable to families and parent centers. So we would never want people to think this is kind of the only thing geared to families, but we did want to have one special page that would be a good starting place maybe for families. And we do have some of it also in Spanish, and we have just a variety of basic information for families to get started, and then we do always emphasize the family rights and procedural safeguards, and you can go directly to some extra information just really about procedural safeguards for families. And I think this is just often a really important place for families or parent centers supporting families to help them understand what their rights are and what they could expect from supports and services. So that's just a nice page if that's a good starting place if you think for some families that you work with. Lynn, did you want to add anything about that? Okay, so the next thing we were thinking is when Lisa and Deborah asked us about this, we thought we should think about maybe the hottest topics that you all might be interested in. And I hope we didn't miss the mark on these. We'd like to share these. And then if there's anything else you want to talk about, we'd be happy to do that too. But for us, the biggies right now are the revised recommended practices, the state systemic improvement plan work that's going on in every state. And it's always been, for many years, a really important area for states as well as for families to be involved in the measuring and improving child and family outcomes. So we just thought that would be of particular interest. Let's try Lynn's raising hands again. I don't know. I just want to check and see how many people are just aware that the recommended practices had been recently revised and updated and posted online.
The Division for Early Childhood is a division of the Council for Exceptional Children, CEC. Any hands?
Six people
Lisa,
have
do we
raised.
have any hands up?
6 people.
I was muted. Yeah, quite a few.
Okay, so those of you who aren't aware, DEC has had recommended practices for many years, but what's happened is they've recently tried to think about a number of things. One is, how do we reduce this very long list of 200-ish practices into a more manageable list? So thinking about what are those critical recommended practices. And then they also try to think about, all the time research and field-driven wisdom is changing. And so what do we know now that we didn't know when those practices were developed? And so they put together a commission and had a very rigorous process of looking at field input as well as current research and trying to validate the practices that would be the new practices. And they did come up with, I just want to show you, we have a great place on our web page, and it links also to the DEC page, so there may be more there. And if you want to learn more about it, there are a couple videos, which I think are fun. And I do know webinars like this are not good for playing videos, so I'm not going to play them today because it gets kind of messed up. But there are a couple of really nice videos. In fact, there's a third video that I think if you get in here, there's another video as well. But they talk about what are the recommended practices. I love this one down here. This woman, Talina Jones, I think is her name, and she is a family. A parent of a child with a disability, and she talks about what the recommended practices mean for families, which is really nice. So there's family and provider perspective. And then on this page, there's a direct link to the DEC page and the exact link to the document itself. So if you look into the document, it just took a second. I don't know what that was all about. If you look into it, there's a little introduction, and it talks about the different areas, which are these: assessment, environment, family, instruction, interaction, teaming and collaboration, and transition. And then each topical section has a brief introduction, and then you can see what are we recommending. This is the commission for DEC. What are they recommending around leadership? What are they recommending around assessment? So this is brand new, although many of the practices are not something you wouldn't expect or new to us, but it's new in terms of really pulling together what are the key things we recommend today. We know from research, we know from the field. Lynn, do you want to add anything about that?
Sure? May I interrupt a sec?
Sure.
Nora has I'm thinking, well, she raised her hand, so I'm assuming that Nora has a question. Is that true, Nora? Unmute yourself. *6. Or type it in the box. Oh, she's going to type, nope, no question. All right.
She was just waving at us. Hey.
Stop.
Yeah, really. Hi, Nora. Well, I think this is really a really great conversation to be having. It's something, one of the things Talina Jones says in her video is about how important it is for families to really know what good practices are and for them to be able to talk to providers to kind of know the language and what's important for their child. So, and they're not, in my opinion, I don't think they're very lingo-y. I mean, there might be some of that. So you all might be better experts than I would be on really making sure it's in language that families can understand. But what a great conversation to have with families and a great resource for them. Okay, so that's one of our really big topics. I think it's terrific for families. And coming down the pike from ECTA Center and from other centers and DEC will be resources that link to these different recommended practices. So a little at a time, we're going to be making sure we gather existing resources or create new ones that help explain what does this practice mean, maybe what does it look like, what kinds of supports can we provide different audiences, so maybe families and providers, but also for us administrators and professional development folks to help with the implementation of practices.
So part of our work scope when our center was funded was to work with DEC to figure out how to support the revision of the practices. And then in our work scope also, as Christina was saying, make sure that the information is widely disseminated and understood and used. So that's kind of why this is included in our presentation on our webpage and why we're so excited about the success in the first year of ECTA in supporting a commission to actually review practice and come to consensus on a much more focused list of things that we think will make a big difference in the success of interventions with young children.
Mm-hmm. All right, and we are really trying to embed that in as much as everywhere we see where it's appropriate, we're trying to embed that into our work with states. So, all right, so the second hot topic we had is the SSIP. And if we could do at least one more hand raising, Lisa, I think it'd be nice to see how many people have been involved at all in their state level SSIP work, in their states, I'm sorry. It could be Part C, might be Part B or 619. I'm just curious about your...
4, 5, 6.
That's it?
About
No.
6?
7.
No.
Are you shaming them into raising their hands?
Well, this is a place, I know when Lynne and I, when our TA people work with states, we encourage involvement of parent PTI centers or parent perspective from the ICC or from, parents who are in the program. So trying to get that perspective involved in some of the state level planning, looking at data, deciding what priorities are and how we can make changes. So to the extent possible, it would be good to inquire about and participate in some of your state's work.
All states are required to do a plan for Part C and a second plan for Part B. And the whole purpose of the plan is to improve the outcomes for the children and youth who participate in special ed services. So it really hits hard at the bottom line. And we hope that there's a lot of stakeholder involvement to make sure that this is really a worthwhile activity?
What we have so far, so this is a growing web page for us. In fact, we're working on figuring out a site that's more than just our webinar series. But what we have so far is a webinar series with some introduction, and what we've covered so far is mostly kind of the overview to the SSIP and the phase 1, which is where states are right now, the data analysis and infrastructure analysis. So those are the earliest pieces of the SSIP. There are a couple of, so you're welcome, of course, to look through all of this. Here are 2 streaming presentations. So if you want to listen to a half an hour-ish of kind of the overview to the SSIP or, I don't know what that is.
What are you guys seeing?
You're sort of hovering over the streaming presentation with audio. Uh-oh.
Now what are you seeing?
The share my screen drop-down menu.
Oh my goodness. My whole computer just went blank.
Computer crashed.
So actually what I would invite, if you could do this, Lisa, is could you stop my sharing? Because what I'm thinking is we can continue to go through the PowerPoint and the presentation without my leading it, because we have lots of great content in the presentation.
Are you able to see the presentation now?
Yeah, if you could just try to find where we were in the slides and show them. Christina's computer has stopped working, and that would probably be the easiest things if you would show. What slide do you think was the last number that you showed?
I'm on the SSIP slide.
Go back one.
Go back one? Okay.
Okay, so are we on the SSIP slide?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, terrific. I apologize. I have no idea what's wrong, but if we could just talk. So we have a couple of streaming presentations that I think might be helpful for anyone who's new to the SSIP process and kind of trying to understand what the SSIP and the data analysis and infrastructure analysis are. But there are lots of other resources on that page. So, to the extent that you're already involved in it or you're trying to get more involved, I would love for you to look through those and send us any questions or comments about them. I know just last week, Lisa and I had an exchange where state folks in our clients were contacting us about what are family-friendly ways to share the SSIP information, and Lisa shared some with us that you all have developed from the parent centers. So some of that might be more family-friendly, but I think ours provides a lot of details and information that, depending on what your role is or who your audience is, they may want some more information.
You might not want to try to do that while we're on.
Yeah.
One of the things about the SSIP is that it has a lot of data analysis and a lot of requirements, but at the core of it is that a state is supposed to figure out what's working well and what's not working well, and what are they going to do about things that are not working well. So that goes back again to good practices with families and children. It goes back to good training supports and organization for the providers that are working with families and children. It means a good system of keeping track of data and funding so that everything can operate smoothly. So when they say infrastructure, they mean what are all the things that need to be in place to support the delivery of good practices, and then what does a state need to do to improve those things and improve the practices and then improve the children's outcomes. So even though it sounds like a lot of data analysis and strategic planning, it should be at its best very reflective of stakeholders and what they see as really needing improvement, and focusing on where a state's early childhood programs could be made more effective for the children and the families who are participating in them. So
And
don't
Lynne,
let
this
the
is
data...
Deborah.
keep you
I'm
out.
sorry, Lynn, if I could interrupt for 1 second. I just wanted to, while I'm thinking about it, let the parent centers on the line know that the organizations that house the Parent Technical Assistance Centers are partnering with the new National Center for Systemic Improvement that is going to be working with states as well around implementation of the SSIP, and they specifically brought us on board to really help to get states to do a much better job in terms of engaging stakeholders. So everyone stay tuned, and because we are going to be working with states and also making sure that parent centers are at those tables in terms of making those decisions. So we're really looking forward to working with you guys and also working with the new center, particularly on that stakeholder engagement.
That's great. Thank you for reminding us of that. I did know that, and that's such a key collaboration. Congratulations on having that work out for you. That's terrific.
Okay, so should we talk about the next slide? There's just a couple more things, and the next slide is about measuring child and family outcomes. And that one, we wanted to, there's a wealth of information. The Early Childhood Outcome Center, was funded for maybe 10 years-ish, and then is now folded into the ECTA Center, so we continue that work. And I think almost everyone who's ever been involved in ECHO is now in the ECTA staff as well. So the couple things we thought we might just highlight on the Measuring Child and Family Outcomes page, if you visit either of the links that I have listed on that slide, there are a number of great resources around talking with families. We have been very adamant about helping states involve families in the process that is about family outcomes as well as the process that's about measuring child outcomes. So we've been collecting and creating some of our own and collecting resources from states about having families participate in the process. And there is one really nice resource that I highlighted around the Family Guide to Participation in the Child Outcomes Measurement Process, which I think is a particularly nice resource for families. And then there's the Self-Directed Learning page, and I just point you there because there's a lot of short video or voiceover PowerPoint bits, and in particular, I really think the step-by-step video, which is, maybe 5 minutes or less. It's pretty short. It really does an overview of the functional outcomes. And then there's several voiceover PowerPoints that are about understanding child development for young children, and I think those, among many other things, but might be of particular interest to families as a starting place if they're not familiar with that. And the more families want to be involved in that process, the more maybe some of those resources would be helpful for them to participate. So that's always exciting work, and Lynn and I are particularly passionate about that part of our work scope. Anything else you want to share about that one, Lynn? Okay, and the last two things I wanted to share was just to let you know we do have a page that are specific resources in Spanish. We don't have that for everything on our site, but for those things that are particularly targeted to families, we've tried to have some special resources in Spanish, and we certainly make efforts to try to have those grow. And on the next slide, we have a nice page on the effectiveness of early childhood, and I think it's just really nice to see some of the studies and other information and documents that look at what the benefits are for children and families. And sometimes states use that for advocating for resources, but I think it's also really nice. Some of them are particularly helpful for families to be thinking about how important it is for their child to be in early intervention or preschool to what the long-term benefits are for them. So those were a few of the highlights, we think, hot topics and some of the key things on our web page. But I think maybe if we stop now and see if people have questions, or for those of you who are familiar and think there are other particular things you think are good for other colleagues to know about resources on our page, that would be terrific too.
Any questions? I think your website is a treasure trove.
Thank you for saying so. We think so
No,
too.
it really is. It's a very nice website. It has lots of, how many gazillions of people keep that information up to date?
Yeah, it's a challenge. We have a lot of staff who try to do that, but to make sure we're current all the time is not easy since things are changing and states develop new resources and things change all the time. So
that plagued us at NICHCY, to say the least.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, nobody has a question? Type it in the chat box or unmute yourself with *6 to be able to be heard. We won't have any hand raising going on here.
We're just coming back in.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Well.
How many think that the information that we provided might come in handy or be useful, just for our information?
Is this webinar available after today?
Hi, Diana. Yes, it's being recorded, and when we get it back from Adobe Connect, we'll post the link on the website, which is in the webinar archives, and you can listen to the recording and get the PowerPoints and the handouts from there. Okay, I see lots of people typing, but Kim says, Kim Wallach of Parent Network says definitely useful.
Good.
As always, absolutely. And one person, Connie, raised her hand.
Go, Connie.
Well, it certainly is our pleasure to share with you, and then also just for you to know we're here, and if people have questions or can't find something on the page and are looking for support, just to let us know.
Or if you think there's anything that we could do any better, if it were tweaked, it might be more useful. We're always open to those kinds of comments and suggestions as well.
Nicely done. Interesting. Nora Thompson says, very useful, especially as we negotiate with our state's Part C folks. We can be very much up to speed.
Great.
Yeah. All right. Okay, now here's Indira put it in the chat box, but here's the page on the Hub where you can find all of the resources that you've heard about today, and as well as once we post the audio of the webinar. Sometimes we have a little trouble with that, where it'll work for some people, but it won't work for others, so we may have to do a little problem solving if it doesn't work for everybody. And we definitely would like to say thanks for coming today. We really appreciate it. And our next, there's a link there. If you'd be so kind as to take a moment to give us your feedback. And we just would like to let you know that the next webinar will be on December the 4th, Thursday, same time, same place. And the topic will be Universal Design for Learning and Access to the General Ed Curriculum. So that's a good topic as well. And if you have any particular aspects that you'd like us to touch upon, just drop us an email. Okay. Thank you so much, beautiful ladies from ECTA Center. You do a great job.
Well, thanks for having us.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
All right. Have a good day.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. See you next month.
Thank you, Lisa. Thanks, Indira. Thanks, Miriam. Great job.
Thanks,
You're still
Deborah.
here.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. I guess, whoops. Turn the